Hello, I'm David Morris. Protests rocking Budapest, the capital of Hungary, are making the news around the world, and it's not surprising because this seems to be the beginning, perhaps, of a movement against the long-time strongman leader of Hungary, Viktor Orbán. Could this be the beginning of the end for the Orbán period in Hungary, and what does this mean for far-right nationalist politics, Trump-style politics around the world that Viktor Orbán has been the hero for many years? So Hungary could have a relevance here to many other countries as well if Viktor Orbán's style of ethno-nationalism can be defeated by a new emerging leader in Hungary. Now, I wouldn't be counting our chickens too soon. I wouldn't be expecting this to happen in the short run. I think this is a long-run challenge to Viktor Orbán that is emerging in Hungary. But in recent months, we've seen the president of Hungary resign in a scandal. We've seen the Minister for Justice resign in the same scandal about pardoning a former leader of an orphanage found guilty of sexual abuse against children. That rocked Hungary. That was a big scandal in Hungary, and now we see the emergence of what looks like a new leader of the opposition in Hungary, emerging from that scandal because he's related through his ex-wife to the former Minister for Justice who had to resign in that scandal. He's someone, Péter Magyar is his name, who's emerging now as someone with charisma, with the ability to bring crowds out into the streets of Budapest and to oppose what is perceived and probably quite likely to be a state of corruption in Hungary, which Hungarian people, particularly the citizens of Budapest, are tired of. They want to see a new style of politics. Now, Viktor Orbán, I wouldn't be writing him off in the near term. He's been a very effective political animal for his whole life. I was there in Budapest in the early 1990s when, at the end of the Cold War, Viktor Orbán, already then in his early 20s, was emerging as a future leader of Hungary. He spoke at the reburial of Imre Nagy, the Hungarian Prime Minister who'd been assassinated by the Soviets after the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. There was a reburial in 1989, and Viktor Orbán spoke in Heroes Square in Budapest about Hungary being free and independent. And after all those years under Soviet occupation, Viktor Orbán emerged as a real hero of the new independent Hungary. So even though he was young in those days, it was clear to all of us observers way back then that this was a man on a mission. This was a man who had a real sense of his destiny in leading a new independent Hungary in the post-Cold War era. And sure enough, after a series of stumbling, relatively ineffective governments, Viktor Orbán secured himself as a long-term leader. He's almost been like a Lee Kuan Yew or a Mahathir of Hungary. He's been like a nation-forming leader, and he's done that by crafting this very clever nationalist politics in a nationalist country, in a country where Hungary has a history of 1,000 years as a proud nation, but it's also a history of occupation and invasion and domination by others. So Orbán has secured himself as a hero of the nationalist Hungary. He's been able to say, we will stand up for ourselves. We won't be dominated by anyone. And he's crafted a politics around this ethno-nationalism that is very popular in a lot of Hungary. Not so much amongst the liberal elite of Budapest, which is much more cosmopolitan, much more European Union focused. And so Hungary has become very polarized under Orbán. But it's a clever polarization because Orbán has secured his position as the strong, effective leader, and the opposition for years has been hopelessly divided and ineffective. So the question today is whether this new leader who's emerging, Péter Magyar, or Magyar Péter as the Hungarians would say, whether he is a potential leader who could unify Hungarians. Now, he's talking about a new kind of politics. He's opposed to corruption. Will people believe him? Well, it looks like they might, because he comes from Fidesz. He comes from the ruling party. He comes from the political elite, but he's walked away from it and he's saying, I don't want a part of the system that's been there. It's broken. I want to build a new kind of system. He's talking about a new kind of politics that unifies. Now, can he deliver on that will be the big question. But the best way probably to defeat Orbán in the long run will be to build upon Hungary's patriotism, its nationalism, but in a unifying way rather than in a divisive, polarising way as Viktor Orbán has done. Now, if this is the beginning of the end for Viktor Orbán, it's worth watching, because Viktor Orbán has been the hero of the far-right leaders around the world, from Donald Trump in the US, Tony Abbott in Australia. These are the people who regularly visit Orbán, or they receive Orbán. Orbán just was received at Mar-a-Lago in Florida by Donald Trump just a few weeks ago with great fanfare. These people look to Orbán as their model. Now, if Orbán's political style is now under challenge, this is really worth watching. And Hungary has the presidency of the European Union in the second half of this year, so expect to see more protests, more focus on this new emerging political change in Hungary. Is it the beginning of a change away from Orbán, or will Péter Magyar go the way of previous opposition leaders who have all failed to unify Hungarians, to build a broad enough consensus against Orbán and his Fidesz party? It's uncertain how this is going to evolve, but I think he's an interesting person, Péter Magyar, to watch. He's a very smart person, former diplomat, former insider, who understands the Hungarian mind, understands Hungarian politics. And so while we've seen protests before and they've gone nowhere, this could be the beginning of change at the heart of Europe.